everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of A Class Marble presents The Chat Trap. Today, my guest is Mr. Shobhan Kothari from AD&D in Bombay. Now, this boutique, multidisciplinary and multi-award winning firm are big propellers of the tropical lifestyle and approach each project with sensitivity towards sustainability and environmental responsibility. Let's find out how and let's find out why. Hi Shobhan, how are you?
Thank you. Very well. How about you?
I'm great. So let's start with your name first because I've never heard that name before. What does it mean?
So there are so many stories to it, but the funniest one is that I still don't know what my actual spelling is. The last one that I got was Shoanji, Shoanji. I've changed genders more than most people can think of in their lifetime. I've gone from Shobha to Shobhan to Shobna, Shubham.
Shobna is my favorite.
Yeah, Shoanji was the last one, which is the most...
Shoanji.
It made me feel very monk-like, very zen and monk-like. So
Well,
I'm
that's a
very
good
happy.
feeling to have.
That's a very great feeling.
Silver lining.
Yeah, absolutely. Always look for it.
Always look for it.
Always look for it.
Okay, so it's a pleasure to have you here,
Thank you so much for having
Shobhan.
me.
And let's start off with AD&D, this lovely design firm that you have. And how did you guys start, and a bit about your partner as well?
So we actually, my partner, that's Anand Menon, and myself, he was a batch senior to me in architecture. And we engaged through school, sporadically, not too much. To speak honestly, I think I chaperoned for his current wife right now.
Really?
Who was my batchmate.
Can you say that on TV?
I think so. That's exactly why I think he befriended me, actually.
Oh.
Had no interest otherwise in befriending me. And that's what I did. Not until post, we get a one-year training after we graduate. And he landed up at the studio of Nitin Kilawala, a senior architect. And I landed up there as well. I had the toughest 6 months with him because he showed me all the attitudes of a senior.
Oh, really?
And we didn't get along at that point in time. But, you break for lunch. And at that point in time, they had a lovely studio. It was 3-storied. And we landed up going to the library and spending a lot of time out there. And at the library, invariably, it was just him and me. And we got around conversing about life, design, in general. And that's when we realized that we had so much in common. I think that's where, so he's a Malayali. And
Okay.
he's going to kill me for saying this, but he's a Malayali, I'm a Gujarati. And like all Malayalis, he had his calling. So he had to finally leave for Dubai. Right? And at that point in time, his current wife, he got married and they left.
He is going to hear all of this.
Oh, yeah. He's going to kill me for it as
Yeah.
well. He left and we kept in touch. And, my dad is from a medical background. My dad is a doctor, ear, nose, throat surgeon. My mom is a doctor. His parents are doctors as well. And where I'm going with this is that when he left for Dubai, actually my dad wanted to start a deaf and mute center. We've been running it in our family for the last 37 years. It's a government recognized center. And in those years, I think it was 98, 99, the land was given to dad on a 99 years lease to build the center. So obviously my master's dream was punctured because my dad said that, beta, you'll never get an opportunity like this. It's for a good cause. Why don't you stay back and do the needful? Little that I know that once you go through 2 years of rigorous commercial practice, in that sense, you're bitten by the bug. And I couldn't go back to the academics. But while the 2 years that I was building on, so to speak, a platform for the practice, he was in Dubai, Anand, and we interacted. I had traveled a couple of times to Bali and absolutely had fallen in love with the country and everything, and the decor, everything, the landscape. He happened to go with his wife prior to them deciding to come permanently back to Bombay and settle down. And when they did land up in Bombay, I still remember correctly, it was in August of 2002, he told me that, Shobhan, I just love the country and it's got so much potential, art, craft, why don't we even think of doing something with it? And those were the exact train of thoughts which I had. So I said, okay, you know what? Why don't we start a practice, and at the same time, why don't we open a home decor store simultaneously? And he completely loved the idea. He had pulled in some money, savings of last 2 years in Dubai. I'd pulled in some money and we said, okay, let's do that. So We gave birth to Design and Domain in September of 2002, which was a home decor store, all of 400 square feet, ground floor. Mezzanine is where we had just two of us. And we had this one intern who was kind of fleeting in and out,
Right.
working for us. And that's how the store picked up. That's how Design and Domain came to existence. And the Council of Architecture did not permit us to go ahead promoting that in the magazines and everything. So we had to come up with an acronym, easier to kind of, use the goodwill of the decor store for our practice. So we just put Atelier in front of it. And we got AD&D by virtue of that. We ran it for 3 years. And this was the time where, Raghuvanshi Mill, which is, if people in Bombay know, is like Lower Parel is now more or less the heart of design, lots of stores out there.
Right.
But it wasn't such a buzz then. There existed one contemporary arts and crafts center somewhere, and then there was one Good Earth store by Mrs. Lal, which existed at Kambala Hill Hospital. And it was 4,000 square feet, and we were 400. And we still felt that we were creating a little bit of our dent.
Right, something different, niche.
But 3 years down the line, when we thought that, okay, this is the time to kind of expand or whatever, she moved from 4,000 to 10,000 square feet. And that was a real calling for us, because we had to, that point in time, decide that what's our real thing that we want to pursue? Do we want to pursue the profession? Do we want to become business entrepreneurs? What do we want to do? And we decided that, let's stick to the profession. So, and also the carrot had played out. We had converted enough customers into clients by then in 3 years, because we both were from medical backgrounds. We didn't have any inroads. So in that sense, this played out just perfectly fine. And so we then moved on to our practice. Yeah, the funny part about is, and that nobody knows, is that, people always say that, what does D&D stand for? For the outside world, it's Design and Domain. But for all my friends and, those who know us, it's actually Dosa and Dokla, because I am Gujarati and that's Dokla, and he is a Malayali. So we often play it out and we say Dosa and Dokla.
What does the A stand for?
The
Amalgamation of dosa and dokla.
Perfect. Well, there we have one.
I like that.
As I said, we are very open to other people's interpretations. Just you saw that with my name. We're open with even our business name.
I was going to say that. You're open to interpretation, period.
Always.
From your own name to your firm.
Always. We have no problems on that front.
Okay.
That's how it kind of came into inception.
Okay. So, you've been together for so long now as a team together, and you built this firm together.
Far too long that this black coffee is not going to help.
Not going to help.
Yes.
We have more. So there's a constant supply, don't worry. Are the sensibilities different? What do each of you bring to the table? As in, if you could put it in words.
So, when parents say that I have two kids who are chalk and cheese, I never understood that until I became a parent, though even I have one child. But if there was ever a true definition of what chalk and cheese is, it's what Anand and Shobhan is, or what Design and Domain stands for. Because you're not going to get two polar individuals than the two of us. He is cool as a cucumber, very sedate, very in control of his emotions, very artistic, introvert as a personality. Well, I'm just going to kind of keep praising him.
Yes.
And the audience and you can interpret everything else about me.
You're very, very aware of the cameras.
So I don't want to kind of say anything about myself. So yes, that's what Anand is all about. And that works brilliantly because, as a design practice and as design per se, being in a design world, there are no right or wrong answers.
Of course.
Right? You probably you start from one thread of thought thinking and you probably reach another end. And you're always looking for collaborative efforts. You're looking for people to kind of engage with you. And thankfully, I'm blessed with a partner who thinks from a different vantage. And what that allows us is it eventually helps us to filter our thoughts and converge upon ideology, if you may say so, at a broader perspective, which works for us as a company.
Okay, which is what I was going to ask you next, that what sets AD&D apart from maybe the rest of the new age design firms that are existent? What do you think your speciality is?
So I think first I'd like to break that question up into two parts. One is the ideology. I think for us, we're very much cognizant of the fact of where we are geographically. We're in a tropical country. We understand that tropical living is paramount.
Of course.
We are blessed in a country where we have beautiful sunshine and we have this phenomenal weather that happens around the year. Bombay it's a bit debatable because we have only 3 seasons, which is called hot, hot, or hottest. But other than
Rainy.
that, yeah, muggy. So let's add muggy to it. But other than that, it's typically tropical living, and we understand that as our what I would like to call as the central theme for our practice. So our interpretations of that define a lot of our work that we do, especially in architecture. Having said that, I think when it comes to the genre in which we are, how would I say, found a little bit of a niche, is that in the residential sector we do a lot of interiors, but we do a lot of bungalows and farmhouses. And that's something that has brought a lot of accolades for us. Having said that, you know, it's a canvas which is an intimate canvas. You know, you're meeting a family, you're becoming a part of their lives, and it's great fun, there's nothing wrong with that. But you're constantly searching as a designer, how can you flex your muscle more as a designer?
Of course.
And that's where we kind of came up with another vertical, which was KD&D, which was a company that we formed with another partner of ours, Kiran Kapadia, senior architect, and that got launched about 10 years back. And in that vertical, we'll end up doing a lot of developer work. So we do sales galleries, show flats, clubhouses, spas, retail. So it's all of that. So let's just put it that way, that what we now have a buffet on our plate, and we are able to kind of cater into these different scales and genres.
Okay. So what do you personally, Shobhan, like designing? What would be your passion project to design?
I can't help but give you a cliched answer, you know.
Really?
Yeah, because anything that where you can get to flex your muscle is going to be fun, right? Anywhere where you are stifled as a designer is not fun. So if you're going to give me the luxury of designing a home, it's great fun. But if you're going to give me a luxury to design, let's say, a spa or a clubhouse, I enjoy it as much because the scales are different. There are other parameters which come into play and which excite you, because when you're designing a clubhouse in a complex, you're designing for 500 families.
I know, yeah.
Right? So all of a sudden you're thinking that, okay, how do I make it work for 500 families?
Really?
Whereas over here you're thinking, how do I make it work for 1 or 2 families, depending if they're joint or nuclear. So I think there are different parameters that excite you in design, but eventually I think what's steadfast in both the genres is what I like to call is storytelling with empathy, right? Because if you're not a good narrative, you don't have a good narrative for your design and you're not empathetic towards your end user, that design at some level is going to be a failure. It's no more than a showcase for you. It's not a showcase for the final end user. So I think that is the single line thought process that I think those are our benchmarks, or the blinders that keep us on our track.
Like you said that, it has to be feasible for the end user. It's
Yeah.
most beneficial for the end user. I wanted to ask you a very pertinent question in relation to the current scenario. Do you think the client servicing has changed a bit post-COVID, especially in the past 2 years? Do you notice a change in how the clients approach you, their thought process?
So COVID has changed everybody. I think it would be very ignorant of me to sit here and say that COVID has not changed. It's changed for everyone, including you, I'm sure, and everyone. It's changed all of us. What has not changed, however, is the fact that I think people have become more aware of their immediate surroundings. They've become a little bit more empathetic towards each other, realizing that there is a finality now to life, and whatever you were kind of displacing for a later date needs to be addressed and needs to be moved on. So I think that's the good part about it with regards to COVID. With regards to the profession at large, I think the profession at large has seen a sea of change over the last decade. It's not just these 2 years. From design being functional from our parents' times,
right,
where home was a home where you go back after work to stay. Ghar jana hai, rehna hai. It was not something that you wore on your sleeves, right? All of a sudden, I sleeves. Look at me. Yeah, sleeves.
You're like
Yeah,
experiential is what you keep on
So,
talking
yeah,
about.
So the thing is, now all of a sudden you see homeowners taking pride in their homes. You see design at large, so not just home genre, but in general, people have become more erudite because they've traveled so much, so they have now started to respect design a lot more. So the finesse in design, whether it's a restaurant that you go to or a retail boutique that you go to, everyone is now traveled, everyone wants to lift their game.
They're very well informed.
And they're very well informed. And that has changed right from the person who's got the money bags, as I call it, the clients, right down to the visionary, who are the designers. They're all putting it together and saying that, okay, how do we change the bar? And I think that's happened over the last decade.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you next. What are the changes that you've noticed over the past decade in the industry? And I'm glad you answered it yourself. Okay, let's talk shop a little bit now.
No?
No, I would like you to tell us what are the current trends in the architecture and design industry that you personally really enjoy working with, and what do you predict for the next 5 years?
Once again, I think I'm going to duck this question.
Ducking every question,
no, the only reason why I'm saying this, trends, unfortunately, when they were really a trend forecast, the way it's done internationally, it's done with a lot of fine tooth comb, in the sense it's done over selective audience, it's been taken, there's a case study, it moves on in that fashion. So it's a seasonal thing. And the seasons are pretty much determined a season in advance, right? Internationally, fashion included, and so on and so forth. However, for us, it's become more of a, rather than a trend, I'd call it trendy. It's become something of armchair critiquing to say that, this is what should be the next thing. I genuinely try to steer away from this whole trend concept, because good design will outlive all of us. Good design does not have a time span, right? Taj Mahal
Of course.
does not have shelf life. And I think that's the beauty of good design, that there is no shelf life, right? But the minute you kind of bracket it and pigeonhole it and say that, this will work and this won't work next year, I think somewhere you're playing God. I don't think that that's how it works, right? So I don't like that as a concept. To answer your second part of the question, you're asking me to play God, to say that what's going to be the next trend. I wish on March 18, 2020, someone asked me what was the year going to be like, and I could say that, we're all going to be out of work.
Yes.
So it doesn't work. So again, I think I'm going to be a little bit cautious in saying that more than the trends which dictate design in terms of superficial veneering, I think it's going to be more about the fact that is there fluidity of space that is going to be designed. All of a sudden you're seeing work from home. All of a sudden you're seeing homeschooling. People have to adapt their homes into these additional functions that have come about. Is your design evolving enough to take on those challenges of the future? I think that would be the right approach to have. The city is a growing fabric. It's a breathing animal. We're always constantly saying that the infrastructure is lagging behind. We need to start planning way in advance to see that, what are the things that are going to come into the thing. We are now talking of an Elon Musk saying that, he's going to come up with his fancy version of transportation. And are we saying that, are we planning for that? Are we planning for the different things that the world is going to... Are we ready for that? And are we, even if you're not ready, are we gearing towards that? I think for me, adaptability and fluidity are going to be the key mainstays moving forward.
Okay. And then I'll have to ask you here, then what about sustainability and eco-friendly? Do you think that is also going to be
I think those paramount per se. We don't need to kind of, hijack a conversation. And I'm not saying you're doing it, but I think there's this whole industry that just says that, sustainability, green, look at what the environment is doing. Your home, your office, your house, your building is not the threshold. We need to start wearing
Right.
the neighborhood. We need to start wearing the city. We need to start owning up and saying India is mine. And once we start doing all of that and believing that this is the ownership that we have, you're going to take all the necessary precautions. How many of us take the effort and saying, we talk about green? Again, as I said, it's unfortunate, a lot of it is armchair critiquing, where we kind of sit and we say that, I go on a trail to the Himalayas and all the plastics that I see, I pick it up on the trail and I put it in. And I'm saying, yeah, but do you do that on the streets?
Exactly.
Right? So it's the same individual who's not doing that. And I think that's where the problem is, that I think we'll have to get a little bit more serious with
Get away
regards.
from selective activism.
Yeah, selective activism does not work.
Yeah,
So I
doesn't
think
work.
sustainability is here to stay, and it's not something that needs to be underlined. It needs to become a part of our DNA. It is, if it's not sustainable, I think at some levels, it must be a point of rejection.
Of course.
And that's how design should be looked at, per se.
But do you notice that change now?
Oh, 100%. I think initially it was too much of a drive from the designer's front, right? We're constantly trying to adapt those tools into our design. But now you have what I would like to call as the clients also, who are equally responsible and wanting to kind of contribute in a positive manner. Is the number few and far between? Is the economics few and far between to allow it to become a sustaining program across the board? Of course it is. But I think it's at least a start. We can always look at the glass as half empty.
Of course. Okay, so let's not talk about trends, because I think that's a bad question for you.
Yeah, for me.
So how about, what is your personal design space like? If you had to design your own space, what would that have? The elements?
I think one word that I would like to have anybody walk into my space is to say that it's timeless, right? I don't want to be, again, stereotyped into a particular bracket. I like people to say that it's easy. It's easy on the eyes. It's not something which is very coming to you very forcefully. It's not ostentatious. At the same time, it has this understated elegance about it. I think these are words, or these are adjectives that I completely associate with. There's a funny story. I mean, I've used it innumerous times at the studio while explaining design to my team. And I said that, when you look at houses, when I say houses like, your LVMH or the Hermes or anything, they did not become a house of design overnight. Right? It's about 50 years, 75 years, 100 years. But their ethos were put into place that they can transcend time, right? And now what you have to figure out is, like, for example, when you look at Patek Philippe. Patek Philippe has a beautiful tagline, which I think I have embraced as a design philosophy. It says, you don't own one, it's something that you carry on for the next generation. So it's something that you are not purchasing just for yourself, but it's something that it's a legacy that it moves on. And I think that's the true
definition of.
Yeah, so there's a word called raison d'être. In French, it means the purpose of design. That's the purpose of design. You've got to think like that it's not time shelved, it's just going to move on.
It's like jewelry, you pass it on.
Yeah, the design needs to move on, the home needs to move on. It's finally inhabited by human beings, and you don't want every generation to come and say that, okay, it was done in XYZ, I want to break it. Where's the sustainability in that?
Right.
Right? So it's not. So, but I think one is searching for an elegant, understated timelessness. I'm hoping people look at my design and say that.
You're putting that thought into it, then I'm sure it'll be shared by the person who uses it. But that kind of design, if we talk about ancient architecture in that regard, then do you think that something like that would be comparable to what you're saying right now, that it has to be transcending over time?
Isn't it? Look at all the heritage places, right from the south where we have the Mahabalipuram to the north where we have the Mughal architecture. Everything, whatever you're seeing, why has it stood the test of time? Why do we go to Europe and why do we see, the Parthenons of the world? Why do we like all of that, right? There is a reason. The reason being that, its scale, its beauty, its simplicity, it's transcended time. It's something you take back with you in whatever level, and you embrace it and you say that, this works. I think the wheel was invented by the Egyptians long time back.
Yeah?
Yeah, right? We're not here to reinvent the wheel, we're repackaging the old wine in a new bottle. Right? Of course, there are technological advancements, there is generational changes and all of that, and you are fine tuning all of that for a better and better living.
So, Shobhan, I'm going to ask you something now which is completely in contrast to the last question about transcending time. I'm going to ask about social media. What is your take on it? What do you think is digital marketing as important to the profession, to the industry right now?
Anything and everything and done in moderation is good. Problem with social media right now is it's an uncontrolled animal. And because of that, I think there is just way too much fluff and noise on it. I particularly hopefully try to show a lot of restraint while I put the contents out there. I wouldn't say that the contents are absolutely curated. So there is what I would like to call as human error kind of content that can go on to just show that humanized side of the profession, the work and everything. But at times one gets the sense that it's been hijacked by quantity, not by quality. And that unfortunately it's here to stay. It's an animal which is here to stay. You can't do anything about it. I think at best, you have to be showing your own restraint, and it's your 2 digits and the phone, just keep it away.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
so.
that's about it.
Stay away from the screen.
I think life's half problems are best solved when you keep your mouth shut. Similarly,
And the phone shut.
Life's half best problems are solved if you just stay away from social media.
Yeah, in
as much
today's,
as
yeah,
possible.
exactly.
So just do that.
Keep your fingers to yourself.
Yeah, I can only imagine if 180 words or whatever number of words that Twitter allows was not provided to Trump. Can you imagine what a beautiful 4 years?
The world would have been so much more beautiful.
What beautiful 4 years would we ever had? Or for that matter, our political scenario, and I'm not taking any sides. I can't for once imagine. And that's the thing. Social media has become an animal where it's no longer a reflection of your thought process. It's also become a point where you have to take sides. It is become a place where you're in this or you're out of this kind of a thing. You have to take that side. And there is no debate. There's no qualitative debate.
Of
There is what I would like to call as an intellectual vacuum in places.
It's more like a refraction than a reflection.
So as a result, you just want to embrace it in parts. The best example, and I will say this actually, it's like having an affair. You have an affair, you get out. That's it. You do not want to keep this as a consistency
It's
thing.
not a regular relationship.
No, you cannot. You can just completely hijack your
You have to be detached.
your day-to-day life. So you have to detach from it.
Okay, but AD&D does have a social media
We
presence.
do. I am the one who's kind of anchoring it. Before the interview started, I think I had done a couple of stories and posts.
You're going to share them.
Yeah, so please do so. So I just shared some works of ours which was happening overseas. I just placed it because that's where it came from. So the thing is, yeah, you do tend to put it out there, but again, I think you've got to be cognizant of what you're doing. I don't think it's a trigger-happy platform. I think unfortunately right now it's a trigger-happy platform. It's like literally you're saying you put the spoon in your mouth and you want to click a snap, you want to put it down, you want to click a snap, you did this, you want to put a snap.
Everything is documented.
Yeah. Well, if your life is so much more interesting, how come you're on Instagram? Yeah?
Exactly.
How come you're not anywhere else?
Yeah, that's what I say. If you're having so much fun at a party, how are you getting the time to post pictures?
Exactly. No, why are people not with you?
Yeah.
Why are you by yourself? So that's my point.
That's the question we'll leave for the viewers to answer, why is that?
Yeah, so I don't think I give it too much importance. I don't take it seriously.
Yeah, it shouldn't be.
Let's put it that way.
Like you mentioned that you posted pictures, updates about the work that you're doing right now in here and abroad. I wanted to ask you about this latest project of yours that you were talking about before, Shift.
Yes.
So if you could elaborate on that.
So I think the Shift House is in Amber Valley. It's at the outskirts of Bombay. It's an artificial lake which is landlocked with the UNESCO Western Ghats. So the siting could not have got more perfect in that sense. As a designer, I think there's one thing that you have to constantly show restraint is that are you going to overpower the landscape in which you're going to build, right? And I think especially when the landscape is so beautiful, Are you there to make a stamp and say that, here, see me, don't see around me? But I think the way we approach design is to say that, besides it having to make its statement for what it's worth, it has to become a subservient to its surroundings.
Of course.
And we were very successful in that project because we called it the Shift House. It's like a Jenga play of blocks where
really?
two blocks have just kind of displaced each other. We've displaced it from the earth plane, has also shifted down so that when you enter, you see the lake, you see the mountains, you don't see the structure. And I think there were limitations from the governing body in Amber Valley that controls the land that said that you could not have it as a different kit of parts of house. You couldn't have a pavilion here and a pavilion. It had to have a common plinth. So all of that having put together, I think challenges were actually explored, and I think we've come up with something which was far more interesting and exciting. And I think it's been received well at large, and I think that's very heartening.
Okay.
So that's the way we work. And again, I mean, as you mentioned earlier, that we work overseas. Now we're doing projects in Nepal, we're doing projects in Dubai. I think what we're trying to do at some levels is to say that, of course, we're not forgetting the fact that we're Indian architects, right?
Of course.
Primarily, that's the sensibility that we're bringing to the table. But at the same time, the context in which we're building is we're building in Nepal and we're building in Dubai. And what's their heritage and what's their culture? And is there a possibility of marrying the two so that, one is not alien to the other?
Of course.
And I think that has been somewhere subconsciously driven in most of our projects. So we try to keep it as true to itself wherever we build.
I mean, maintain the sanctity of the place that you build at.
I think also the, build form is what I would like to call is tangible, right? I mean, what we are sitting on is a chair, is a tangible, the backdrop is tangible. And it's being, in that sense, here to stay. The lights will come off, we'll leave. What stays on and on and on is the intangible, which is the experience,
True.
right? And I think design is about capturing the intangibles in the tangible, right? So it's about saying that, okay, I've built a house, but how is it capturing the culture and the essence of where you're building?
How does it feel like a house?
How does it feel like a house? How is
home.
it bringing the inside out? What is tropical living? How have you explored the thresholds? So, are you creating memories for the families that are living there? Are you creating those kind of moments, spaces? It's layer over layer over layer, which makes it complicated. But I don't think design needs to be complicated. I think the more simpler the design looks, I can rest assured you it's highly layered and it's highly complicated from whatever greats works that I've studied. You kind of realize that just because it looks simple, it's like the Apple phone, right? You look at the Apple phone and you go, "Isme kaun si badi baat hai?" But now we are like 11 editions, 12 editions
Right.
down, and we still don't have one replica in terms of an operating system.
And nobody can open it.
Yeah, with
Nobody
that ease. And I think that's the beauty of it, that, easy design is complicated as a process, but the output is very easy. So you need to kind of, that bridge, that crossover is what makes for a good design. So either it's a make or break. And I think for us, not all our designs at sometimes in time cross over that threshold, but I think the challenge is to constantly see if we can cross over and make a complicated process look simple.
Looks simple. Well, I have a couple of crossovers here that have done very, very well. So I wanted you to shed some light on them.
Sure.
Especially the Ohana House and Resort House along with C'est La Vie. So these are the plum projects that I would like you to talk about a bit.
So C'est La Vie, so they're actually in the first two projects, that the Ohana and the Resort House that you mentioned, they're actually in an urban fabric and they're first homes for families. C'est La Vie at the other end is actually a second home. It's a farmhouse, it's a getaway home from Bombay. So there's a place called Alibag, and it's a family home, and that it's been designed for that. It's designed for what I would like to call as the pause life, right? You kind of living a life in a tier 1 city like a Bombay metropolitan city where the pace is maddening,
Yeah.
right? And all that you can think of is where you can just kind of reach there and go into that aha moment and say
Yeah.
that this is it. You know, it's this pause. C'est la vie is about that. C'est la vie, as the name suggests, also is about that, taking that life as it comes. It's a pause thing. So we kind of designed it as a tropical home, pool being the center of the house. Everything circulates around that. And life happens in those outdoor spaces. Contrary to that, you look at an Ohana house and the resort house, and the scales are different. I mean, the resort house is 3 times or 4 times the scale of the Ohana house. The only reason why we called it the resort house is because the scale was so humongous, it felt like we were doing a hospitality project.
Wow.
The client's demand was that, I want to feel that I'm living every single day in a resort.
Thus the name.
And hence the name. Whereas Ohana House is again a family home, urban settings in a tier 2 city, again catering to what I would like to call is a lifestyle in the tier 2, which allows you a little bit of elbow room as against to a vertical lifestyle in a city where you are constantly, transportation is more vertical. This was more horizontal, so you have this constant connect with nature and the outside. It's not about just walking
Walls.
from one space to another space.
Right.
It's about walking from one space to another space, but glancing in and out into the outside world, seeing
how
what's
lovely.
happening. So that's the Ohana house, and I think that just got amplified multi-folds in the resort house because it was that much more sprawling. So yeah, these were the houses.
Okay, lovely. It sounds really, really interesting, and I like the amalgamation of nature along with structure. I think that
Yeah.
really works.
I think it's critical. I think, as I said, we have been blessed. I think, as much as, you complain about how hot it is in our country, but the tropics are a great place to live by
Of
far
course.
compared to the, the colder regions of the world. And I think the sun is also, well, it can be extremely humbling at times, the sun, but at the same time, you just have to see it as from a designer's perspective when the sun falls on your buildings.
Yeah.
And what it does, it just lights it up. So I think it's beautiful.
I think it's the same effect on human beings. You need the sun, hence
Yeah.
your space needs the sun.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. Nice.
Thank you so much, Shobhan. It was such an interesting conversation with you. You're so super articulate.
Thank you so much for having me.
I think it reflects in your work as well. Like you spoke about layers in the space. And I think what you strive to do, you really deliver it, and it
I hope
sounds
so.
like it
I
sounds like
hope
it
so.
also.
I hope so.
Okay, thank you.
The
Thank you.
jury's out there.
Yes, but before we let you leave,
Yes.
now we're coming to the fun part of the interview.
Oh, yes.
We have a rapid fire round.
Oh, lovely. Excellent. Look forward to it.
I thought you'd think, oh no, I don't want to
No,
do
no,
that.
no, always good. Surprises are always good.
Always good. Okay, so are you ready? So a general rapid fire. I'm going to ask you a question, 2 choices, you pick yours. Okay, it's a short and sweet one.
Okay.
All right. So are you ready?
Yeah, hopefully.
Okay, here we go. Contemporary or classic?
Contemporary.
Minimalistic or eclectic?
Minimalistic.
Striking facade or striking interiors?
Is there an option C?
What would be an option C for you?
It's what I would call as a harmony between the two, not either or. I think I have seen way too many designs where one has overwhelmed the other and it has failed. So I'm looking for harmony in both.
Okay, well, very well said. Okay, work from home or go to office?
So I'm a homeboard, though people will not believe it, but I love the energy of my studio, so work from office.
Work from office, okay. Sustainability or durability?
They two go hand in hand, but if I have to be pushed against the wall, sustainability.
Bright lights or low lights?
Ooh, low lights.
Your favorite work of architecture in your own city?
Very nice. I think Victoria Terminus, the VT station.
So this
Looks like you're pausing more than me.
I am pausing
And-
more than
and-
you because that was really fast. No, I'm wondering whether to ask you the next question or not, but I'll ask you. Date night would be quiet dinner at home or movie night?
To whisk away the wife, quiet, just me and her. If it can be done, it's not been done in so many years, but yes, me and her.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do you do to unwind when you're off work?
Music, wine, cheese, and a book.
Interesting, very nice. Okay, so that was the fun rapid fire, but there's also, because we are sitting in the hub of beautiful stones
Okay.
and we're surrounded by them.
Okay.
So this next set of rapid fire questions is pertaining to that.
Okay.
So, usually you see marble applications on the floors, on the walls, maybe the washroom or the facade. So, I'm going to mention some marble names and you will tell me what do you think you would like to put them at.
That's provided I know the names. Okay,
Of course
let's go.
you would. Well,
Okay.
if I know them, you would know them.
I hope so.
Okay, here we go.
Because they've kind of changed from, they changed names.
Oh, they
so
changed
let's
names?
Just, let's just,
No, these are very regular ones
okay,
that I've been given.
yeah, let's hope so.
Okay, Satvario,
Flooring,
flooring. Okay, Michelangelo,
bathroom,
Thasso's white,
walls,
Bronze Armani,
flooring,
Amazonite,
definitely a bar.
definitely a bar. Nice one. Soda light blue.
I'd love to have my basin vanity in that.
Your basin vanity.
In that.
Okay, nice. Well, that was easy.
Yeah.
And that was quite
Not
fast.
bad, right? Not bad.
Not bad.
Not bad.
Thank
Managed.
you so
Thank
much,
you.
Shobhan. This was such a fun conversation.
Good.
I hope you had a good time.
I did. Thank you so much for making it fun.
Thank you so
Right.
much.
Thank you.
I would now like to call upon Mr. Rajesh Bhandari from A-Class Marble to get a memento signed by Mr. Shobhan Kothari from AD&D, Mumbai. What a lovely and articulate conversation with the dynamic Mr. Shobhan Kothari of AD&D Mumbai. Well, that's it for me today. See you all on the next episode of A-Class Marble Presents The Chat Trap. Till then, this is me, Pavleen Gujral, signing off. Ciao.